Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. I'm Hilary Robertson, and for this episode I'm delighted to be joined once again by Aleksi Glick, whose album Guitar and Me is out now. I first spoke to Aleksi for episode 23 of Harmonious World back in December 2020, so it'll be really interesting to hear how life is going for him coming out of the pandemic. Guitar and Me features 13 original compositions and solo arrangements of guitar-based classics, and he recorded these while he was in isolation at the height of the pandemic. There are all sorts of musical styles here, from bossa nova and jazz standards, classic songs. There's the timeless classic, which is beautiful, Georgia on My Mind. And each track shows the different influences on Glick's style, from Wes Montgomery to John McLaughlin and Jimi Hendrix even. And I hope you enjoy listening to my conversation with Aleksi.
Hey, Hillary, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks so much for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a pleasure, and I think we're in a very different place now, aren't we? So it'll be
Yeah,
nice to
yeah,
talk through
totally.
that. So
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually in the UK about in England, and then yeah, just like in London, and then also in Leeds and Wakefield about 3 weeks ago, actually. You know,
ah,
yeah,
right.
so that was nice. Was playing there with my dad actually. So we were playing. He's more of a folk musician, so we were playing all these kind of little folk clubs, but it was fun.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
nice to be back in front of an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. So, it's all good. How are you? How's everything with you?
Yeah, everything's good. Everything's good. Life changes here and there, but we get on with it, don't we? So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
music is, I've had some, my father died sadly, but music
Oh,
has
I'm
been
sorry
an
to hear
amazing,
that. Yeah.
yeah, but music has been an amazing balm, and
Yeah.
it really does help.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So talk to me about this album. I love it. I really
Oh,
like
thanks a
it.
lot.
Yeah,
Appreciate
it's
it.
yeah, no, it's great. And I love the fact that, it's there's the originality of it, which is really nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me how it happened. When were you recording it?
Oh, yeah. So I guess I kind of recorded it during like the height of the pandemic, which is a very good time to record a solo guitar album, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, luckily, solo guitar has always been, one of my favorite things in the entire world. I've always like, even, before I was a professional musician, when I was like in, at a conservatory studying, I always used to listen to like a bunch of like, Joe Pass and, Johnny Smith. And then, more recently, I, got into that, Julian Lage solo guitar album, and just, yeah, a lot of people, that I looked up to and contemporaries that were, doing, a bunch of like really great solo guitar work. And, yeah, so I just like the, so during the pandemic, I just started to like post a bunch of like solo guitar videos because, it's like, what else am I going to do? Like, not actually,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it was a good time for it. And then, uh, a mentor of mine, actually, this guy Bill Nuremberg, a mentor on the business side. He's not a musician, but he's been, he helped with Herbie Hancock's management and the Pointer Sisters and a bunch of other great acts. And he, just sent me a message, and was like, this could really be, the solo guitar stuff could really be a big part of your career if you wanted it to. And then, I talked it over with him, and also, talk to Amanda, as well. She's always, been such a great, old friend, and, someone that I trust, and obviously is kind of, someone that really, we work a lot together. You know, yeah, and she thought it was a very good idea too. And yeah, it was just something I've kind of always wanted to do, and it just seemed like the right time to do it. And so you know, I was toying with different ideas for, a solo guitar project. And then originally I was like, maybe I should just make it, classic, just a jazz album, which,
Right.
it is a jazz album, but there's a lot more to it. And then I thought, I mean, there's so many different kinds of music I love to play. And the guitar just lends itself so well to so many different kinds of music. This is like one of, the few opportunities that I kind of would have, for, you know, as a passion project for to play so many different kinds of music that were like influential to my development and the guitar's development and actually have them be coherent on one album. And so the idea I kind of settled on was, and I don't know if it exactly came out exactly like that, but the overall idea was kind of like a genealogy of the guitar, where it's like, playing all these different styles that helped, the guitar's evolution, whether it's, kind of blues, Americana, folk, jazz is obviously the overall, the, you know, uh, main genre, but under that there's a lot of kind of subgenres as well. Obviously, I've always really loved a bunch of Brazilian music too, and that comes out a little bit on that too. And it's another great, like bossa and samba is obviously another great kind of music at the guitar. Has just been a big part of So yeah, I mean that's kind of how that all came together, and I had so much fun recording it. And as we were talking about earlier, it's during times of, like soul searching or sadness, I mean, having that outlet of music is really, special. And I felt like this was a very, you know, the word that kind of keeps coming back to me when I talk about, kind of the recording and the process of recording this album, which I actually recorded myself. I got Dave Darlington to mix and master it, and he's one of the best jazz engineers in the world. So I don't want to take all the credit. Probably wouldn't sound half as good if he didn't, give it some spice at the end. But I did record it all myself. And yeah, it was just a very intimate process. That's kind of the, and yeah, it really kind of helped me get through, I guess, the darkest days of the pandemic.
Yeah. And it definitely comes across that you use the word intimate, and that definitely comes across. It sounds like an intimate recording for an intimate listening.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's generally the idea is, with this album. Yeah, it's very well said. It's like it's really meant to kind of you know, break down any barriers between, the listener and, kind of what I'm just doing in my living room,
Right.
although, yeah. So, it's kind of supposed to kind of, yeah, that vibe is definitely, I wanted it to come across.
Yeah. Well, it does. And although I love the original tracks, I really like your version of Georgia on My Mind.
Oh, thanks a lot. I love that song so much. I mean, it's kind of like the ultimate, like, kind of like just classic American, like, soul tune or whatever, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, yeah, I guess it was kind of originally written by Hoagie Carmichael and, obviously like a Tin Pan Alley kind of thing. But then, the version I'm obviously kind of really basing my arrangement on, which is also completely different, is, kind of going off the classic Ray Charles version, but yeah, that's just a tune that's just always really spoke to me for some reason. And I just feel like it really lends itself well to, kind of a jazz, the jazz idiom pretty well. I mean, it kind of is a jazz tune, but there's, obviously it's been played by so many different kinds of artists. And then, yeah, it has that kind of classic American roots music kind of thing that I was going for on this album.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. It always makes me laugh because it's such a classic, standard jazz track. And yet Georgia is, well, my experience of Georgia as the state is, I mean, I've been to Atlanta, and what is there very much else? It's like, and
Yeah.
yet the song sort of harks back to whatever it was in Georgia that Hoagie Carmichael was missing. So yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that it's Georgia's a really interesting state because, like, yeah, I mean, I feel like on the surface, it's like, bunch of malls, in Atlanta, there's like the Coca-Cola factory and Delta Airlines and all these, it's a very corporate
Yeah.
place. But I think a lot of my friends that are actually from Georgia, and I do have quite a few that, there is like a certain soul there that I feel like is kind of hard to uh, really see kind of at first glance, and that I think kind of a lot of people that are still from the state kind of really feel like a real attachment to it, and I,
Yeah.
think it's, yeah. So, and, I do feel like some of the places, especially some of the cities like Savannah and Atlanta are having a bit of like, a resurgence and a lot of artists are moving there. So it's actually, I feel like it's in a little bit better of a place and, becoming less Trumpy too, which I'm happy
Which is
about.
always good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So, coming out of lockdown, because obviously we when I spoke to you, it was December 2020, and we kind of thought it was going to be all over. We
Yeah.
thought we were heading for the out, and of course it took another year before we
Yeah.
really were. So,
Yeah.
how was the end of your lockdown?
I mean, it's really interesting for me because it's been such a kind of start and stop kind of thing. Like, right now, in New York, there are a lot of cases. Of course, it's way less dangerous than it was because there's so much immunity and Omicron's less virulent. But, I'd be lying if I said it still wasn't affecting me and a lot of musicians on a certain level, in New York. It's much better than it was, 1,000 times better, of course. Most people are just kind of living their lives, and it's obviously, things are, majorly improved. So I don't want to, sound like a glass is half empty guy because it isn't. But I do still think twice sometimes before like, you know, throwing certain shows,
Mm.
and but with each passing month, it does seem to get better and better. I have been able to play a lot more this last year, obviously in front of audiences, which just felt amazing. I mean, just that was, that sense of connection was just something that I missed. You know,
Yeah.
so deeply. And yeah, and then I mean, now obviously I'm also just way busier than I was, a year ago too. Because I'm, playing again most nights, and but still also, I mean, still kind of, I'm kind of emerging sort of tentatively because it seems like it's like two steps forward, one step back is how it's been
Right.
kind of in New York because it's like, I don't know, there are just so many people clustered together that we're having a little bit of a surge now, but it's, again, nothing like we experienced as far as at least,
Yeah.
how lethal it was in the past,
Yeah. We've got a bit of a scare at the moment in Europe. I don't think it's so bad over in the States with this monkeypox thing.
Oh yeah. Oh
You know,
yeah.
which is a bit weird because it seems to be if you get near somebody who's got it, then it can be quite contagious, but you've got to actually sort of be really close to them. And,
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem to be life threatening in the same way that COVID was, particularly at the beginning. So, but it's
Yeah.
still a little bit scary.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. From what I've heard, it seems like at least the thing with like the majority of like diseases that are like scary. At least you kind of like know when you have them. The thing that freaked me out about COVID was like, you know,
Yeah.
like I don't know, it's like, I could be feeling completely fine and going about my business, and like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. It seems like, yeah, I mean, monkeypox. It definitely has like kind of like a scary name, like monkeypox,
Yeah.
But what I feel like I don't know. I feel like it seems like it's probably going to be okay. Hopefully,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what's next? What does the future hold for you?
Oh, that's a very good question. I mean, there's so many. It's interesting because like things have, as things have emerged. At the beginning, I was kind of just saying yes to everything, and now all of a sudden there are just so many different things happening, and I kind of need to, focus and organize, and really like I'll give you an example of like right now, obviously the solo guitar album, still, promoting it and playing a bunch of solo guitar shows here in the States. I would like to get over to the UK at some point to do that. Actually, it's actually on a fair amount of UK radio, so I feel like it might. I don't know. I was just thinking it might be a good idea, and I'm actually going to be playing in some in uh, Finland this summer, and I was trying to maybe book a few shows, in other parts of Scandinavia. But um, yeah, I mean, right now I'm my band's the band Snack Cat that
Yeah.
we talked about. Where our singer moved to us back to Australia, during the pandemic. So where
Right.
that was a little tough, but now we're kind of like we turned into a bit of a collective, and we're kind of starting things back up with that. Since this album seemed to do pretty well, I'm you know want to start recording another album under my name right away, and I pretty much settled on doing a trio album. Might have a couple duo guitar things in there too, but so that is another thing as far as like project under my own name. And gonna keep kind of that vibe of combining a lot of different kinds of music. Like the overall genre will be jazz, but I really want to kind of play more with that kind of intersection between like Americana, folk, roots music, and jazz. And then also I'm just writing like a bunch of different, albums and stuff for like, publishing companies. And, I'm writing one for like Warner Music, like Warner Chappell now. And that's more commercial stuff. That's not like really under my own name stuff. And
Right.
do another thing for West One in the UK right now too.
Oh,
And,
okay.
yeah, a bunch of that stuff too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, stuff is cool. I like it. It's definitely like a little bit more commercial than like, some of the stuff I'm really passionate about. But, it is a way to like be creative and keep, it's, make music
Right.
and obviously they have more of a budget than, solo guitar. Most people do for solo guitar, so,
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
but yeah, so that's kind of, but as far as like my own stuff, really, I'm going to continue to like release more music under my own name, kind of using this kind of the solo guitar album as kind of a jumping off platform. And also there's going to be more stuff from Snack Cat too coming up, but we're in a little bit of a transition phase in that band just because of our singer leaving, and kind of turning it into a little bit more of a collective. But we'll be releasing some music and also doing some more shows pretty soon.
Right. Great stuff. Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you very much for joining me yet again. That's brilliant. It's nice to talk
Thank
to you.
you so much. Yeah, it's so good to talk to you, Hillary. It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's really, really fun. And yeah, sometime when I'm in the UK, hopefully next time doing like, some more, solo
Yeah.
stuff or jazz stuff, would love to, yeah, meet up and, yeah, that'd
Definitely.
be great.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Aleksi Glick. And you're listening now to Rebirth from his album. And I started with the title track from Guitar and Me, which is his latest solo guitar album. Thank you for joining me once more for Harmonious World. Please do rate, review, share, like, and don't forget that you can also buy me a coffee. If you go to Buy Me a Coffee and look for Harmonious World, you can make a donation, which will always help with the costs of producing this. I have a long list of artists lined up for interviews for the rest of Harmonious World, so please do come back. Meanwhile, share what you're good at. Let's make this world a little more harmonious. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.